I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Financial Juneteenth. I wanted to take a second to give my unwavering support to Michelle Alexander, the author of The New Jim Crow. Michelle is just such an amazing force when it comes to contributing to what I consider to be the modern day civil rights movement, which is the fight against mass incarceration. We for many years, many of us were convinced that that individuals who went to prison were just bad people, undeserving of any human rights whatsoever. And while we can certainly agree that excuse me, that people who commit crimes and hurt other people deserve to be punished. What's really been happening very consistently is that the criminal justice system has been so biased that the punishment most often does not fit the crime. You have many individuals, particularly black men, who are guilty upon accusation because they can't afford access to justice. All white juries are more likely to incarcerate them. Police are more likely to stop and frisk them, which lead to the altercations like the one with Walter Scott in South Carolina, who was shot in the back eight times as he ran away from a police officer. Now, what also happens is prison is rife with all kinds of other human rights violations, from the allowance of prison rape to other forms of torture, beating from guards, things like that, or attacks from other inmates. And then to add insult to injury, the sentences for black men tend to be longer than whites, even when they commit the same crimes. And then to really top it all off, once they get out, there's this consistent marginalization, social, economic, and otherwise, which ultimately leads to many individuals going back to prison, or many individuals living lives in which they'd rather be dead. Now, we're not in any point arguing that it's okay to commit a crime. We know that people make bad choices; they make mistakes, but the issue in our society is that there are some people for whom mistakes have this much of a cost, and then other people where the mistake can have that much of a cost. Like Daryl Pageant, a friend of mine I know, who got a 40-year sentence for possession of 1 gram of crack cocaine. These kinds of sentences are all over the place. Mario Lloyd, for example, in Chicago, another guy I know, sold some cocaine. He admits to that. He sold some cocaine in the 80s. When he went to prison, they sent him to prison. They gave him 15 life sentences. Then they also locked up his mother, his sister, and his brother. And for many, many years, his brother was in there for 20 years, I know. And so what we have to really ask ourselves is what happens to families when the providers of these families are being incarcerated for very long periods of time? Well, the families are going to struggle. The children are going to struggle. The children are more likely to end up in the criminal justice system. Mario Lloyd, the example that I gave you earlier, his son was murdered 20 years later in the very same neighborhood that his father used to sell drugs. So when you're talking about the effects of incarceration, you have to realize that there's a ripple effect. This is a holocaust for the black community. This is not just something that we're upset about or something that's a little bit out of control. The United States incarcerates more of its citizens than any country in the world. Also, we incarcerate more black men in America today than South Africa did during the height of apartheid. There are more black people, as Michelle mentions in her book so eloquently. There are more African Americans in the criminal justice system today than there were enslaved in 1850. So there's a direct link to slavery. It's not a coincidence that the states with the most that had slavery, that had the most black slaves, also are the ones that have the most black prison inmates. That's all by design. That's a system. And the other goal of the propaganda is to convince you that you should not care about these people because they're bad people. And most people only become sensitive to the prison issue when they've been affected up close. Either they've gone to jail or they have a loved one who has been incarcerated. I've had people in my family be incarcerated. My biological father went to prison for drugs. My biological brother, who I don't know very well, but he went to prison for drugs. I've helped raise kids whose fathers were in prison for drugs. It's very, very rampant, very, very persistent, and so we have to ask ourselves what happens in our society when we're incarcerating people who are otherwise nonviolent, or who would otherwise make different choices if they had different opportunities. So Michelle, I got something from Michelle. Somebody forwarded it to me, in which Michelle and I know each other. We've worked together. We have the same assistant. She actually teaches or we had the same assistant for a while. And she teaches at Ohio State University, which is my alma mater. And so there's always been kind of a connection there. I think she respects what I do, and I know I respect what she does. And we've been on a couple radio shows together. But one thing I've always wanted to make clear is that I have 100% support for Michelle. Whenever she opens her mouth, she could tell me to go jump off a bridge. I would go do it because I just love and respect this woman that much. And I really think that you should, if you haven't checked out her work, you really should check it out, because this is the main issue that we're dealing with as a community right now in America today. So one of the things, and I know it took me a while to get to the final point, and I apologize for that, but there's a lot to talk about when it comes to this issue, when it comes to Michelle Alexander, who's one of the great visionaries and great leaders of our time. Um, Now, here's the thing. Michelle has, in her open letter, basically talked about Apple Computer discriminating against ex-felons, and basically having sort of these blanket policies that say if you have a conviction, you can't get a job here. Period. And she points out the fact that the EEOC and the federal government have basically outlawed that kind of discrimination. That basically you have to look at each individual case and decide on a case by case basis whether or not this individual is or is not qualified for the job. Because as you and I know, if you have relatives who've been incarcerated, you know that there are a lot of very smart people who went to prison. There are some good people who went to prison who didn't do anything that was that bad. Maybe they made a mistake when they were 17, 18 years old, and they came out and brought their lives together, did some amazing things. Some of the smartest people I know actually are some brothers I know who went to prison because in many of those cases they took their incarceration and turned it into an upside on their life. One guy is a rapper named Yurima Karama who basically said when I went to prison 20 years ago, he did 20 years of I think it was on a drug charge and a gun charge. A lot of, I mean, just literally they've shoveled black men into the penitentiary for modern day prohibition, which is the drug war. If white kids were going to prison at that same rate, they would have stopped it long ago. But black people, unfortunately, they want to get rid of you. There is a plan for your extermination, spiritually, economically, psychologically, physically, and otherwise. So when Yurima Karama went to prison, he said, "You know what? I used that time in prison to turn that prison into my own university." And so all that time he was studying. He read hundreds and hundreds of books, and that guy is one of the most brilliant people I know. And he's not the only one. There are many many out there. So the idea that a guy like Yurima, a good person who wants to provide for his family, can't get a job at an Apple computer, I think should be insulting to all of us. Now, you know what I always say about black men learning how to build their own and build their own companies, which is why I suggest every black child in America take a class or be taught how to start their own business. And especially those who've served time in the penitentiary, because I think that society emasculates black men. It kind of rips you, rips your testicles off when you go into these work environments where they're already treating you like a second class citizen because you're black, and then they may even abuse you because you're an ex felon and they don't feel like you have any other opportunities. This is something I saw very, very, very close with my mentor, who was like an older brother for me. He was actually my uncle, but he died, and I know he went to prison at a young age, and he wasn't right for the next 20, 30 years after he went because I believe some bad things happened to him. So if you want to know why this issue is personal for me, that's why, because this is affecting my own family, and it just hurt me to the core to have to watch this happen to the people I love. So Michelle is saying that if Apple does not change their policy, you should boycott Apple products. I support her 100%. I own a Mac computer, but if Apple does not change that policy, my next computer will not be a Mac. I will not support Apple. I will not support any corporation that endorses that kind of discrimination. Look, these corporations, they're taking big stands when it comes to LGBT issues and all this other stuff, which I think they should. That's perfectly fine. But when it comes to race and racism, there's no group of people being discriminated against more in corporate America than black people and ex-felons. In many cases, there is a little bit of an overlap there because many of us have an ex-felon in our family. When it all boils down to it, if these companies want our money, they need to support our community. And the fact is that when these individuals get out of prison and they cannot get jobs, they cannot provide for the people they love, not only are they more likely to go back to prison, but it makes it so much more difficult for the children. It makes it so much more difficult for the entire family. It makes it very, very difficult for the people they love to look up to them. And I want these individuals to be able to have the pride and the dignity that comes with being able to find work. I also want you to explore the pride and dignity that comes with creating your own business. That's why I created Financial Juneteenth. I taught finance at the college level for 20 years, but I wanted to do this because I want to really help push and inspire a movement, a whole generation of all of us really learning how to build our own and learning how to become economically empowered. So if you become economically empowered working for other people, that's fine, but I think you should still know the power of ownership. So even if you work for somebody else, create your own business, create your own side hustle. Get the feeling, get the joy of being a boss for at least a little while, because I guarantee you, your children will look up to you more. They will be inspired by you. Women, the men are gonna give you that even more respect. Men, the ladies will respect you a whole lot more when she can look up to you and be proud of you. Your mama will be proud of you. It's the best feeling in the world, and I know this feeling. It really it makes me I get a little bit fuzzy, get some fuzzies on my back, I guess, because it might get a lump in my throat when I think about it, because it feels good every day as a black man to know that the people that love me are proud of me. It makes me feel good to know that my mama's proud of me, my daughter can look up to me, all these other things. The relationship I'm in, she can look up to me, all these things. So without going into all of that, I just want to say that I support Michelle. I hope that you will too. I hope you at least look into this and consider supporting our brothers and sisters who've been hit by this mass incarceration Holocaust. And that's what it is. It's a Holocaust. And because I'll support it as well. Just so you know, for the record, we do have a new film that just came out called Resurrecting Black Wall Street. It is about the atrocity of Black Wall Street, which was a massacre. It was not a race riot. Don't let anybody tell you it was a race riot, because it was a massacre. Black people were shot down in the street like dogs, incarcerated in droves, had their homes looted, one by one by one, and no reparations were ever paid to those families that lost everything in this massacre. And so we talk about that story, but we also talk about how we can build Black Wall Streets in the 21st century. So it's not just about exploring what happened with Black Wall Street; it's about resurrecting it so you can examine the scenario through modern day eyes, but then also resurrect those ideas that came from the brilliance of building something like that in 1921. We can learn from our ancestors. That is where our strength lies, and this is what you talk about. This is how you talk about real Black history, not that nonsense you're going to be taught in the public school. But then again, do you ever really think that your oppressor has any incentive whatsoever to teach you the truth about what happened to your people? No, they have an incentive to teach you their truth about what they want you to know about what happened to your people. So it's our job to teach our children their own history. So that's all I really want to say. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World and Financial Juneteenth. Thank you for your support. Check out the documentary trailer at resurrectingblackwallstreet.com. And that's all I want to say. So until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. I am gone. Peace and goodbye to Apple. I'm not buying your stuff until you change this policy. Peace out.